All right. Good morning to Prof and everyone that's watching this presentation. We, as Group 7, we're gonna present our group assignment ECO162 on studies macroeconomy on a country. All right. Before we start our presentation, I would like to introduce all the group members that we have. We have 6 people in total for our group. And first of all, we have Ifan Zafri bin Reniza, which is me. And then we have Muhammad Ifan Rifki bin Irwan. And then Putri Nur Syazwani binti Muhammad Ridwan. Afil Uman bin Nur Faizal. Nur Habib An-Najjar binti Harun Anwar. And lastly, Muhammad Irfan Danish bin Abdul. And all of us going to present about the slide on studies microeconomy on the selected country. So, for a country that we have chosen to do studies on is Singapore. Singapore's success as a nation can be attributed to its strategic location, effective governance, and well-managed mixed economy system. Despite being a small island country with limited natural resources and land area, Singapore has transformed itself into a global hub trade, finance, and transportation. Its expanding population and continuous land reclamation reflects the country's adaptability and forward-looking planning. Through an open market economy supported by the selective governance intervention, Singapore is able to ensure economic stability, attract foreign investment, and maintain a high standard of living for its people. Overall, Singapore demonstrates how sound economic policy and efficient resources management can overcome natural limitations and support long-term national development. Alright, so for the purpose of the report is to analyze Singapore economy using key macroeconomic concepts such as demand, supply, elasticity, consumer behavior, and wage determination. It aims to show how this mechanism function in Singapore mixed economic system and how they influence decision making for consumers, businesses, and the government. And for the scope of the report, it will cover and analyze how macroeconomic principles operate within Singapore economy. This includes examining Singapore economy system and how the government and market shares roles in decision making. This report also analyzes demand and supply for selected goods or service in Singapore and evaluates how much and how price and quantity are determined in the market. Additionally, the report discusses elasticity, consumer behavior, and wage determination to understand how individuals and business make economic choices within Singapore economic structure. Alright, let's get more details about mixed economy system that's been used by Singapore. Singapore practices a mixed economy where market forces largely determine economic decisions, allowing producers and consumers the freedom to own resources and pursue profit. At the same time, the government actively intervenes to correct market failures, maintain economic stability, and promote equity through policies such as tax, subsidized regulation, and price control. This balance between a strong market economy and effective government intervention has enabled Singapore to achieve efficient stability and social welfare. Alright, so for resources allocation and decision making, both are influenced by market forces and government intervention. Demand and supply mainly determine the allocation of resources, encouraging efficiency, competition, and innovation. However, the government intervenes to correct market failures, provide public goods, and promote economic stability and equity through policies such as taxes, subsidies, and regulation. This balanced approach allows Singapore to achieve efficient resources use while ensuring social welfare and long-term economic growth.
Next, I'm going to continue this presentation with one of the most important studies in microeconomics, which is demand and supply. We choose rice for our example product. Before we get through, what is demand and supply actually? As we all know, the definition of demand is the ability and willingness of a consumer to buy goods and services at a certain price level, place, and time range. An alternate term of demand is ceteris paribus, all other things being unchanged or constant. For supply, supply is defined as the producer's ability and willingness to supply different quantities of goods and services at different possible prices and time range. Same term used for demand, which is ceteris paribus. So, what are the factors for demand and supply? Factors of demand for rice. In Singapore, rice is staple food for Singaporeans besides noodles and other carbohydrates. It means that demand for rice are inelastic and remain stable. While factors of supply for rice, Singapore's rice supply is stable due to strong government intervention and diversified imports. Government policies, import diversification, and regulated stockpiling help maintain a steady and affordable rice supply. The COVID 19 pandemic in 2019 significantly impacted the equilibrium of the rice market in Singapore. As Singapore relies heavily on imported rice, lockdowns and trade restrictions reduced rice imports, causing a decrease in supply. This led to a leftward shift of the supply curve, resulting in a higher equilibrium price and a lower equilibrium quantity of rice in the market.
Firstly, the degree of price elasticity of demand. Inelastic curve shows that a change in the price of rice causes a smaller change in quantity demanded, which means if price increases, consumers still buy almost the same amounts because they need it. However, if price decreases, consumption doesn't rise much. On the other hand, degree of price elasticity of supplies shows an inelastic curve, which means that a change in the price of rice causes a smaller change in the quantity supplied. Even if price rises, producers or importers are unable to increase supply easily because production takes time. Nevertheless, in the extended period, importers can switch suppliers. For example, they can import rice from the neighboring countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. As a result, if prices changes significantly, making long-range supply more elastic. In the short term, both the demand and supply for rice are inelastic because it is a necessary staple for consumers and takes time for producers to cultivate. Although consumers will continue to buy rice even with price increases, producers cannot quickly increase supply in response to higher prices. However, supply becomes more elastic in the long run as importers can source rice from other countries. Next, the elasticity of demand and supply. Demand for white rice in Singapore is price inelastic mainly because rice is a basic need, so people will continue buying it even if the price rises. Additionally, there are only few substitutes for rice, so rice is a fairly cheap. Even significant changes in price slightly impact on overall budgets. Supply of white rice is price inelastic in the short term, but more elastic in the long term. This is because Singapore does not grow rice, so the entire rice supply fully depends on imports that cannot be increased immediately when global prices or demand change. Nevertheless, in the extended period, importers can switch suppliers, making long-range supply more elastic.
Let's talk about consumer behavior. We as consumers, we combine food, transport, shopping, and entertainment to maximize our satisfaction. But unfortunately, we have low income and high living costs in our country. So, in order to overcome that, we need a rational mentality on decision making of purchasing any products based on our needs and wants. So, in Singapore, their behavior is based on affordability, value, and promotion deals in the market. I will give you an example. In the context of choosing what to eat, they choose their food carefully according to palatability and affordability based on their budget. One of the popular foods is Hainanese chicken rice, which is considered a staple food in the country. So Singaporeans purchase on foods that are varied, but we can take example of two substitute foods, and that is Hainanese chicken rice and char kway teow. Okay, so let's talk about Hainanese chicken rice. Firstly, Singaporeans often choose this meal because they are craving something comforting, light, and less oily. It is a versatile dish and is suitable for any ages, children's, adults, and elderlies. It's praised for its simplicity, fragrant rice, cooked in chicken stock, and tender roasted chicken, served with a side chili, and don't you forget about dipped soy sauce. It is available in all hawker halls, from Michelin star restaurant to a neighborhood stalls, which is easier to consume it. And other hand is char kway teow. People choose this food because it's flavorful, rich, and comforting. Often, if in the evening, it's seen as heavier, more flavorful option compared to chicken rice. So, char kway teow,
that suits individual taste is sometimes harder than finding a good chicken rice because often it is often considered more oily and less light. Some Singaporeans may view it as occasional indulgence rather than frequent everyday meal like chicken rice.
Next, I will discuss about the wage determination in Singapore. Singapore wage rate is not determined by the workers fully, but the firm and government can also change the wage rate. But based on our finding, we find that foods and beverages is the sectors that are similar with the perfectly competitive market. This is because there are large number of restaurants in Singapore where the restaurant demand the same level of skills, productivity, and experience from the worker. This is similar to perfectly competitive market where the labor are all at the same level. And then we find that the government also plays a role in Singapore by setting a price floor to make sure the economy is stable and there are no discrimination in determining the wage rate. There are several factors that we find based on our research. That is skills, where the high level skill are paid much higher than the low skill worker, and productivity, where the high productivity worker are much valued by the firm, similar to marginal value productivity concept. And lastly, we find that the type of economy, the type of market itself influence the wage rate significantly. For example, in perfectly competitive market, the workers are the one who set the wage based on their experience, skills, and their own preference. But in more monopolistic kind of economy, the employers are the one who set the wage rate. And we also can say that there are some economic system where the government also plays an active role in determining the wage rate, which is setting the new policy and setting a price floor for the wage rate.
To summarize the World Report, Singapore used a mixed economic system where they managed to develop into a first world country with the disadvantage of having limited resources and finite land compared to the other countries. Due to the success of the country, we are inspired to go more into details about the microeconomics aspect. The study we have done on this country are about the demand and supply of a product, elasticity of demand and supply of a product, consumer behavior, and wage determination. We decided to choose rice as our research study on demand and supply, where we get a lot of different and interesting results out of it. This study explained about the factors that affect the demand and supply in the market. Moreover, we did research about the real world situation to the sea, within the changes in the market equilibrium. Alongside with it, we also studied the elasticity of demand of the product to see how sensitive the consumer are to the changes of the price in the market. For the elasticity of supply, there is two research done because of the long term and short term give the different result. Then, consumer behavior also plays an important role in the demand for the market, and producers know what to produce in the market to get maximum profit, but we want to know how consumer behave in the market. We choose two main dishes in Singapore to make example of how society react on how to manage their limited resources to fulfill their certification. Lastly, research that has been done about wage determination and the factor that affect how much wage that you will receive, and we also explain about the demand and supply of level, including example. In conclusion, this report elaborate in detail on macroeconomic aspect above perfectly regarding our chosen country, Singapore. This country display a very well structured management system while sustaining a great status in the global economic ranking alongside with other worldwide countries such as the United States of America and the United Kingdom.
Alright, before we end this presentation, let's rewind back on what's the purpose of we do these microeconomic studies on Singapore. It's basically you want to see how individuals, firms, or government maximize their for government they maximize their society welfare, and then for individuals how they maximize their satisfaction with limited resources. So basically that sums up on why we do these studies, and I think that's all. And thank you